Good afternoon. Larry Cohen was awesome. It is both humbling and an honor to follow him, and we hope to keep the volume up in a different way, if we can, by talking about some issues that are near and dear to all of us. This panel will be talking about the clean energy jobs plan for the 21st century. And we're lucky to have a number of unique perspectives. I obviously bring manufacturing to the table as the moderator, but we have the service sector, we have investors, we have advocates who work with young people and on college campuses. We have people familiar with working with utilities and with federal and state policy. And so we're going to see by the end of this, and with your help as well through your questions and comments, as if we can construct some of those good ideas that reflect what's in the Blue-Green Alliance Jobs 21 plan. I will briefly introduce the panelists, and then I will take a seat myself and we'll start the discussion. We'll have a couple of rounds of questions up here, and then we will open it to the audience. And on my cue, the microphone's right there, and we'll hope to get as many questions as we can. I'm pleased to be joined by, from left to right on the stage, I'm not saying that's their politics, that's just the way they're lined up. Shannon Smith, who is the CEO and managing partner of Abundant Power based in Charlotte, North Carolina, and the father of 2 sets of twins, which is awe-inspiring to me. I only have one. I feel like an underachiever. Please welcome Shannon. Steve Leffin, next to him, is the Director of Global Sustainability at United Parcel Service, UPS, based here in Atlanta, Georgia. They have, I think, 400,000 employees in the United States, and many of whom are represented by the Teamsters Union, along with some by the Machinists Union and the airline pilots as well. Please welcome Steve. We also have Debbie Nisson, who is the Vice President of Ullico Investment Advisors, which is part of Ullico. They make strategic investments in all sorts of amazing things, and we welcome Debbie, who joins us from Washington, D.C. to talk about that. Please welcome Debbie. And finally, we have with us Felicia Davis, who is the Program Director of the Institute for Capacity Building's Facility and Infrastructure Enhancement Program at the United Negro College Fund, also based here in Atlanta. And we're honored to have Felicia with us. Thank you. And I think I'll start with Shannon, and I thought it would be helpful for you all to see the perspective that each of us bring to the clean energy jobs discussion. So maybe, Shannon, you can tell us a bit about your work at Abundant Power, what you were doing, and some of the insights. I know you have a deep understanding and appreciation for public policy with regard to the clean energy sector as well.
So thanks, Scott. Yeah, besides having 2 sets of twins who I want to have good jobs, green jobs when they get older, we started Abundant Power Group in Charlotte, North Carolina back in 2009. And it's a financial service company. And it's a financial service company dedicated to providing capital, investment capital, to the clean energy economy, broadly speaking. And we have a business that is investing in growing companies. It's a growth equity capital business. So it's not private equity like it's been vilified. It's all about growth. It's all about jobs. It's all about plants. It's all about helping the winners win after the venture capitalists are done, helping them grow. We have a group of people working on energy efficiency finance, creating models for investing in that retrofit world, as well as leveraging governments and helping what the government has been doing to spur that part of the economy. We were the founding partner with President Obama in the Better Buildings Initiative, and are working as the advisor and designer on the DC PACE program in the District of Columbia, along with some others here in the East Coast. And then lastly, we have a group of folks that are working on clean schools project in low-income areas, primarily in the Carolinas right now. We hope to bring that to Georgia and other places around the country. So we have groups of people, all of whom have actually repurposed their careers. Folks that got laid off from various jobs at some of the banks and other financial institutions in Charlotte, who believe in the vision of a clean energy economy, that we're not going to drill our way out of this, and who think that they can take a skill set they perfected in one space and repurpose it toward solving these problems and bringing capital into them. I think the only way this sustainable economy becomes sustainable is if it has a robust profit motive that benefits everybody. And that is the most sustainable thing of all. So that's what we're trying to do, create instruments that will work and will scale. The only thing I will say is that we do want to be a commercial voice in the public square. And hopefully we'll have time to talk about that. But what I think is important to drive a broader green economy that we all hope for is to have stronger commercial voices in that dialogue. It cannot just be environmentalists. It may not just be able to be labor. It can be labor through a commercial mandate of why we need to do this. And if we can join together, I think we'll have a better legislative outcome. So that's one of the things our company is dedicated to being. We're not just going to sit back and make payroll and do our job. We're also going to raise our hand and speak up for the legislative needs that will drive this economy forward.
Good. And Shannon, I'm glad I mentioned better buildings, because we're going to want to return to that in a bit of the low-hanging fruit we see in retrofits. Felicia, you at the United Negro College Fund and the work that you do both with young people and then obviously the facilities that you're able to work with as well.
Let me say that, first of all, how pleased I am to be among such distinguished panelists. And I think in planning for this session, I gave a lot of thought to kind of how did we get here and where are we going. Working with UNCF's Building Green Initiative, we work with Black, Hispanic serving, and tribal institutions that certainly are struggling not only to retrofit their buildings, but also to educate students in a more sustainable curriculum for these supposed green jobs that for many of those students have not materialized. So it's kind of challenging in terms of the moment. But as looking at the opening and sitting here and thinking about, okay, we've got equity and investment, there's something that I think this audience knows fundamentally, and I'm flashing back to 4 years ago, 2008. You know, everybody knows where they were election night, and when the CNN announced, okay, President Obama has won. Some of us celebrated, went wild. I happen to have been with Dr. Dorothy Height. She owns a building, she's passed now, but owns a building on Pennsylvania Avenue, in between the Capitol and the White House. And after we celebrated, a Canadian reporter asked Dr. Height, what does this moment mean? And she quoted a great labor leader, A. Philip Randolph, who said, at nature's banquet table, there are no preferred seats. You get what you can take, you keep what you can hold, and you don't get anything without organizing. So as I come into this space and I'm looking, the speech before I was all revved up and I'm looking at what's number 4, I'm thinking, well, education and training isn't directly there. And even though I really rather say in the space of energy efficiency and retrofits and how HBCU buildings are so old that it's the lowest hanging fruit. The fruit's on the ground. If we don't pick it up soon, that fruit will be rotten. But there's a piece that we're not going to be able to get there if we don't even take it to a deeper level, because the collective is not necessarily with organized labor. As people are out there and struggling, and yes, we have the Occupy, yes, we know we're in the 99%, but as we're engaging with students on these campuses, there has to be some real outreach and development with this group who have student IDs, no voter IDs, and we're thinking that we're trying to build a green infrastructure. So I believe, I would open up by saying what I think is most important is capital, equity, and profit and growth notwithstanding. I think dignified jobs for people is the #1 goal in America. I think that if we can have a message that says jobs with dignity as the overarching paradigm, rather than typically going back to saying, okay, where's the profit incentive? So with that, as I travel to institution, we're finding that we're retrofitting building by building. So we don't have a campus-wide zero carbon demonstration. We also don't have a public, we talk about climate deniers, a lot of people in the public don't know what to believe. So I think that we have to, on this list, engage the public in monitoring. We can teach people to check the temperature and record it. And we've now got global data systems. Let's engage all of the labor union members in reporting that. Let's find new ways that people are looking at their soil, looking at their water, looking at the stocks, where they fish, where they hunt, the things that they do. That will bring new people into a movement that is 99%, but we got to get the other 30% that's not quite with us. So I'm going to stop there and let my other two colleagues join in.
I think that's a very important perspective. And unless we get the next generation bought in, actually it's going to be much harder to achieve any of these goals. That's absolutely right. Well, Debbie, at Ullico, you obviously make strategic investments. Tell us about the relationship of that to the clean energy economy.
And I'd like to tell you first a little bit about who Ullico is.
Please do.
And thank you very much for having me. I've been following this conference and attending in DC for several years and was happy to go on the road with you this year. Ullico was founded in the 1920s. A group of labor leaders got together and said that they needed to form a company to provide insurance to union members who couldn't get it because their work was too risky. So the company has grown and evolved over the years. Like any other insurance company, we have insurance products, we have fiduciary insurance products for you trustees out there and union officers, and we have investments. We have a 35-year-old product, a debt real estate product called J for Jobs that has only done projects using 100% union labor. We have some other investment equity type investments, but this year we launched an infrastructure fund and infrastructure business, and it has what I believe is one of the strongest responsible contractor policies there. So I'm really speaking to the good jobs, because when we do infrastructure investments, it's going to create a cleaner economy by nature of the work. But our responsible contractor policy is not just for construction, but it's also for maintenance, operations, and manufacturing where we can find it manufactured here. And so we're working on that.
That's fantastic. I think that's great. And the investment side is something we have to bring that capital to the table to make this work. Steve, UPS obviously has a big footprint, lots of employees, large vehicle fleet, packages going everywhere, airplanes going all over the place. Yet you are a company committed to sustainability, and you have a solid relationship with your workers as well. Why don't you talk a bit about?
We absolutely do, and thank you. I'm thrilled to be here and appreciate the opportunity to speak. UPS, as most folks know, we're a very large employer. Depends what day it is, but we're third or fourth or fifth employer, private employer in the U.S. We have the largest ground fleet in the U.S. of any company. We're the 9th largest airline in the world. So we have lots of folks, lots of airplanes, lots of vehicles, and we take a sincere interest in sustainability. Our mantra is measure, manage, and then mitigate. And we demonstrate that through many things. You had mentioned that you read our sustainability report. We appreciate that. So we have a climate change statement in our sustainability report. We put a sustainability out well before our competitors one of the leaders in the space. We've done a sustainability report for 9 years now. There's something called the Carbon Disclosure Project, which is, in our eyes, one of the most important renderings. It's an assessment of reporting transparently about carbon. UPS has the best score of any company in the United States, and actually the best score in the world, tied with 3 other companies. So we take transparency very, very seriously. There's something called the DJSI, which is an investor perspective, the Dow Jones Sustainability Index, and we're on the North American Index for the DJSI. We take a very credible approach to measuring our impact and then managing that through a host of different domains that I'm sure we're going to talk about a little bit more. So appreciate the opportunity to speak here today.
That's great. One of the things that actually Shannon suggested that I read, and it's a McKinsey report on resources in the future, and it's a lengthy report, but it's actually worth taking a look at. It's very eye-opening. But one of the things that they identified is that one of the best rates of return for investors, and also something that will do the most societal good, is these energy efficiency type efforts, particularly with buildings. So in addition to obviously the work you're doing at Abundant, what federal, state, incentives, programs do we need to keep this rolling and to get more buy-in?
Well, I think there's a bill that was just introduced last week on the congressional side that was started in the Senate that is a Portman Sheehan bill, which would open up a number of programs that don't exist now for energy efficiency and move them forward. There is also the notion of a clean energy standard that has been talked about on both sides of the aisle that would incorporate energy efficiency, but also renewable energy, which I think, while not necessarily a mandate, since most of this is controlled at the state level by public utility commissions, sets a guidepost and opens up new dialogues and conversations at the state level, which could be fruitful. So I think, those two things, along with perhaps some of the language that is being discussed currently on the Hill around property assessed clean energy, which is a way to finance energy efficiency on the property tax bill for both residential and commercial, would be the most promising legislative projects, in my opinion. I mean, the more we can put in sort of sustainable programs and rules and get out of the way and not manage it through the tax code, I think that'll have a longer term, better longer term prospects for surviving political wins than tax code based support, although I think some of the tax code based incentives have been effective. But I just think they're more politically vulnerable.
Yep. No doubt. I mean, we've seen some expire just within the last couple of months here that I know people are keenly interested in, obviously seeing continue, 1603, 48C, just to throw out numbers, things like that.
I co-chair a PAC that has been created. It came from the Clean Energy Economy, which was birthed by the Clean Tech for Obama group. They created a group that has now been refunded and renamed the Advanced Energy Economy. And we have a PAC, an independent PAC now, that will be standing hopefully alongside coal and oil and all the other big fossil fuel industries and trying to shape and influence and be part of that same dialogue on the Hill. And that's been lacking. And is one of the tools that's necessary to drive this agenda forward, I think.
Well, that's great. So, Felicia, you said something interesting, that a lot of the buildings at the campuses you work with on historically black colleges and also tribal institutions and others are desperately in need of energy retrofits.
Yes.
Tell us a bit about that.
The challenge, the buildings are old, that underscore historically black. So buildings that can be upwards to 100 years old. If you're on a tribal campus, they inherit stocks that come from the 1940s with the World War II buildings, and they inherit them as kind of barracks that turn into housing. So great opportunities for retrofitting. sometime in terms of the credit worthiness of some of these institutions given previous challenges make the financing formula a bit challenging. However, if you have a building that's, so old there is almost no envelope, then the opportunity for savings to, paid for savings opportunities are great. I'm understanding that a number of these institutions have gone through earlier rounds of performance contracting. They did not turn out, they kind of got burnt. So it's really hard bringing them back in, that's one. And then two, some of us are really pushing, if the federal government is going to invest in education, then if we were, at least we should have one state-of-the-art black college. What would that do? Say we picked Atlanta with the Atlanta University Center, well endowed, two pretty well endowed institutions, Spelman and Morehouse, a research institution, Clark Atlanta. Clark has been struggling to build a $50 million, living learning lab standard building. If that investment went into the AU Center, what it would do for the surrounding community would be enormous. So as we're talking about how do we leverage, those are the kinds of partnerships I think the institutions have been removed somewhat from the folks up here, and have, I'm sure, never really looked hard at how do we align with perhaps labor financing opportunities, or so it's been kind of looking at what's the government going to give, and that day is past. That's understood. At the same time, if we're going to invest in education, putting in an infrastructure is not a bad place. If the overhead goes down, the cost passed on to students reduces. So right now we have our institutions, typically a student may spend $30,000 per year, tuition, room, and board. That's not going to be competitive in terms of what comes out. So that's the argument that I use. I'm getting lots of presidents on board. They're signing the president's climate commitment administered by Second Nature. We work a lot with HE, Environmental Defense Fund. We're partnered with them to do energy audits. So once we get the audits, people will be more interested. So we're moving, but in my opinion, we need that big mega demonstration model that we all invest in. And the neat thing about doing it at Black College is there's something about when Black folks do it and get it done, then everybody else is supposed to already have been there. So it's really a good mover. It's like, wow, they did that in the hood, what are we doing over here? So it really, so it's kind of, we have to be strategic because resources are really limited. So we have to be strategic. People have to be put to work. So as much as we talk about big picture and issues, people have a hard time wrapping their minds around issues if they can't pay bills. So it's kind of a losing proposition. So it's, with that, it's, as I sit here, I'm in between because we tend to look at, even when we say, well, we can't use tax policy so much, it's like almost scrap that conversation. We just got to come together and say, look, we're going to pull it. We want to do it right there. We're all invested in it. It's kind of like building a pyramid. If everybody has something in the game, when it's done, we say, aha, we have a victory. People need a win. We really need a win. So that's my little stump speech.
Sounds good to me. Now, I asked you about the buildings. Now, what about the kids in the buildings? What is it going to take to get them interested in, in these green jobs, which, very widely, obviously?
They're interested in green jobs. They got some of us interested in green jobs. So it's like, they tell me all the time, Miss Davis, don't get it twisted. We're already there, We're already global, You're still typing on a big old laptop. We got it, So we can do it in 140 characters. So they get it, but if we move out of the area of, say, the engineering, the hardcore engineering, and then we move over to what are the other green jobs? Moving these chairs and stacking them up, that can be a green job, but it's how you do it and why you're doing it. So I'm here to kind of say, We have to have a kind of a green mentality and stop trying to, good job is a great thing. But right now, people are so hungry, they about broke that down to jobs. And what it means is we have to start saying jobs for everybody is more important than profit and growth. Growth for the sake of growth. I'm like, well, heck, Madoff got big. You know, we just want to look at growth. So I'm saying dignified jobs. And then when we say dignified, green, good jobs, that means a livable wage and a job that doesn't create waste we can't get rid of. Very basic. Kids get that. Kids get that. But if I send a young person to a black college, when they come to, there's no financial aid. It's $30,000, they get $5. So they're borrowing $25,000 over 4 years, that's $100,000. They're coming out the door with $100,000 in debt and no job. They're getting calls that are telling them, you owe $700 a month. They cannot even pay rent or eat, and we're talking about green jobs. So there's a level of frustration. So what does that mean to me? We know some of us that are older, it's like, we've been here before. We're gonna come out of the dip, and if we don't, they'll bury us. So, that being the case, we're moving forward, and so now I'm trying to go back. I'm working with leaders like Dr. Joseph Lowry and others to say, oh, we're going to campuses. There are 40 HBCUs in 7 key states. What are those states? Georgia, Florida, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Texas, Virginia, probably North Carolina, okay? Add them all up, 40 HBCUs. We can't go there saying vote for this guy because of how he looks. The kids are like, we've been there, done that. So we are going with a message of we vote green, and then we break down what does that mean to you. So we are balancing the capacity to have work, invest, and have some of those innovations, because they're thinking of green apps and green applications and green products and looking for those investment dollars. So as we kind of bring them alive with that and then prepare them to be ready and try to work them through this difficult moment, they are so there. We're kind of behind the curve because we're still looking at taking care of them and everything else. So with that, I'd say the signs are great. Tribal colleges, you know, indigenous folks, they say they've been here, they always have been here, and so they have that long view, 7 generations, et cetera. So they're looking at going back to locally grown and kind of a lighter footprint. That too, if we can integrate and embrace all of that and pull that into this movement, then we can get the thing done. And I don't mean to dominate, but it's like one thing, if I'm sitting up here and I talk about energy efficiency retrofits, I go back to a campus, they don't have any money, I've done the audit, oh, this would be great. And then we meet again next year. So I'm kind of like not the one to hand on the panel for that, but anyway.
Well, speaking of needs and jobs, infrastructure is obviously something that our country has woefully underinvested in for a decade or so. American Society of Civil Engineers gives us a charitable D, I think, D minus, something like that.
Yes, for several years.
Right, and we have a deficit approaching, $2 trillion plus in terms of infrastructure needs. You're obviously trying to fill some of that. I was excited to hear you have an infrastructure fund. Tell us about some of the, not specifically, but the types of projects that you're hoping to help spur some investment in.
Well, our definition of infrastructure is that it's an essential community asset and it moves goods or people. And we really want to be involved in the community level assets, the smaller assets, the assets that the huge, the Macquaries, the Meridians, the big funds out there really don't even want to look at because they're not big enough. They have billions of dollars to invest and they want to do the roads and the bridges. We would like to be minority investors in those projects, but we really want to focus on the community level assets as owners. Will be an equity investment. So it's nationwide, and what we believe that we bring to the table is that we can mitigate political risk. And yes, we have political risk in this country. We have, Congress that can't agree on anything, and particularly infrastructure.
Sure.
So we, with our network of folks, I can pick up the phone and call someone in any community, right to work state, I don't care where you are, I can call and I have a friend and I can say, do you know about this project, or what can you tell me? And they know everything because they are trying to create jobs for their members, and that's very important. I'd sort of like to piggyback on what you said, because education is not just for the kids. We can never stop learning and educating ourselves. And our training in the labor movement is bar none. We are the people training the people who are building the clean economy. And we need to keep doing that and reinvesting. And to do that, we have to create, prudent investments for those people. We had a forum yesterday here all day prior to the conference to talk about responsible investments and what we call worker-friendly funds, funds that require union labor. And we believe that, trustees come and go. They work full-time as their regular job, and then they're trustees on pension funds, and that's not easy, and there's an awful lot to learn. There's a big learning curve, and we would like to see education be a priority there, because with those funds, make the proper investments, they get recycled back into the economy in the right places.
So which is exactly what we need to do, absolutely. If you have any questions, you can begin lining up to the mics, because I'm going to have Steve a question here, and then we'll take some questions from the audience. But there's a microphone right in the middle there. If you want to line up, we'll get to as many questions as we can. Steve, obviously, your iconic brown fleet. Everybody knows it, even people in, the far reaches of America. And you've had some electric vehicles in operation since 1933, I think, and and hybrid since the 1990s. But obviously that's a huge yield opportunity with your vehicle fleet. Can you tell us a bit about what you're doing and what your plans are in the future for continuing to green the vehicle fleet that you have?
Sure. So the skill set in sustainability is three components. It's economics, it's social, and it's environmental. And so to do sustainability well, you have to balance those three things. I'll give you an example. Today, an electric vehicle in a commercial application can cost more than twice as much as a conventional gas or diesel vehicle. But we're in a world where energy has limitations, especially the conventional energy that we use today. So if you have the largest fleet in the U.S., 100,000 vehicles worldwide, is it not prudent to consider alternative technologies? So we have something called the rolling laboratory approach. We tried hydrogen, it worked fairly well, we liked it, it's kind of hard to get the fuel. We have CNG vehicles, we have LNG, and LNG, liquid natural gas, is of particular interest because we have these Class 8 tractors, the tractor trailers, semis that folks call them. We call them feeders. We have our own name for almost everything. And so why do trucks use diesel and not use gas? Diesel has 30% more energy in it than gasoline does. And so compressed natural gas doesn't work in a diesel vehicle. Hybrid doesn't work in a large truck diesel vehicle. Electric doesn't work, but liquid natural gas does work. And so the skill in this is really to find what technologies, and it's not just about buying them, but it's really about using them. You don't want to buy a hybrid car that gets 35% more fuel efficiency and run it in Bowling Green, Kentucky for 160 miles, because all you're doing is taking a very expensive set of batteries and running it through the countryside. What you want to do is you want to use that vehicle in an application where it's start, stop, and you get the benefit of the technology. You want to make sure that it's built so that it's robust and can live in the environment that you have. So an electric car may work in New York. In fact, today in London we have electric cars, and we actually get a return on investment even though the car costs twice as much. There's a penalty in London for a congestion tax. And it's $4.70 every time you go in and out of the zone. It's something like, it's millions of dollars a year. So now you have an application where policy has dictated an environment to address a number of issues, congestion, pollution, and electric car is the right solution. It's a little bit ahead of its time. And so the skill set, we had our first fleet of electric cars in 1935. We had 12 of them in New York. We had a whole fleet, probably a little bit ahead of its time. But our philosophy is that we have many assets, and we believe that there is no silver bullet, and it's our responsibility as a responsible citizen, as an employee, to use the right technologies in the right place, try new ones. We were doing Bloom Energy before Bloom Energy was cool, which is a fuel cell. We did it in Alaska. You know, we try technologies. We were the first ones to come out with some hybrid cars. We're trying hydraulic hybrid cars. So instead of having a battery in a vehicle, we have a little diesel engine, and we use hydraulics to propel the vehicle, which is about 10% more efficient than a gasoline or a diesel electric hybrid car. So the vehicle piece is one small part of a very big picture to address technologies needed for the next economy.
Mm-hmm. No, I appreciate that. Thank you. We will take our first question. If you just give your name and if you're directing your question to anyone in particular.
No, this is for the whole panel. I'm Tyree Smith. I'm the director for new program development at Georgia Perimeter College. We're a minority serving institution here in Atlanta. We have 5 campuses, 27,000 students. And one of the things that we're starting to do is talk about sustainability or green-based academic programs for our students because they're interested in it, and also because it seems that industry is interested with college graduates who have a certain skill set, and that skill set is geared towards not just the technology aspect of it, but economic sustainability, social justice, environmental justice. So I wanted to see first if anyone on the panel has experience working with higher education institutions on developing academic programs, and also what kinds of things are you looking for in graduates 5 years from now, 10 years from now in regards to sustainability and green technologies?
I'd be happy to speak about that from a
Sure.
business standpoint.
Sure, Steve, why don't you, and then if anyone else was to talk about it from the educational point of view, Felicia.
So I try to spend what time I can with students. Really, that generation really needs to understand what these issues are, not just climate change, but the next economy, and water is a big part of that conversation. Certainly pollution, consumption, and especially population growth. There's going to be mega cities, emerging economies have demands, and so there's a whole dynamic. And so when I get a chance, I just did Georgia Tech, had 70 college kids in the room, only one fell asleep, so I thought that was pretty successful with a 2-hour conversation. I've spoken to a lot of the Harvards, the Yales, and they have an enormous interest in this. From the Ivy League all the way down to the community college, what we're seeing is young people, professors, academic curriculums are trying to figure out how to fit into this space because there's an enormous interest. In recruiting scenarios now, more often than not, we're getting asked about sustainability, and that generation goes online, looks at your sustainability report, and asks some pretty amazing questions. And so, you know, if you're really thinking about it, it's an important part of a discussion for our life as we go forward. I mean, water is life. So to not think about water, and we're a transportation company. This year we're going to file with the CDP for water. We believe as an organization that we need to take a leadership role in water, and you'll see that. You see that now in our sustainability report. So it's an essential component. Different universities take different approaches. Science certainly has to come into it. Policy is an important part of that conversation. But awareness is the most important part. A lot of people don't even understand what the problem is. And so the curriculum should start with, what does greenhouse gas mean? What are the greenhouse gas standards? What are they trying to measure? What is life cycle assessment? Because once you start to understand that, then a natural curriculum can build from that.
Is Joanna Chu out there?
She is our director for Southeastern
So
for
you've got one of the
sustainability.
you've got one of the best at home, and there's a network of folks that are working on "quote unquote" education for sustainability. I would direct you to uncfbuildinggreen.org. So there's a link there. You go between there and Campus Green Builder. So in the background, there is a growing kind of education for sustainability movement where you have faculty and others from various places in the academy that have come together to look at not only interdisciplinary approaches, but what we're calling as supra-disciplinary approaches, where a number of, whether it's business, economics, some policy, all brought into the salad bowl to come out as salad, but to make it, to look at how are we going to systematize this? How is this going to work? So that effort is underway. There are deans in environmental sciences. There are those in environmental studies. The EJ folks are pushing some equity issues. So that's happening. And I would say I am a very staunch advocate for taking advantage of the freshman orientation and the freshman lecture series and the honors lectures. These are areas of the academy that are naturally interdisciplinary. So if we make sustainability kind of the theme, if you will, you can bring in people, any one of us could address that theme for college freshmen, whether you're coming from the financial aspect or the policy or the environmental studies or environmental sciences or engineering, et cetera. So that, that's one way that we're approaching it so far.
Are you volunteering?
See me after.
Maybe
it's
y'all can talk
possible.
afterwards. Sounds good. Thank you for the question.
We have 5 minutes, so if you can type in your answers, we can get all 3 questions in. Okay?
Perfect. Thank you very much. Yes.
My name is Abel Mabel Thomas, and I have an organization called Greater Vine City Opportunities Program, and I want to say thank you, Felicia, for your work. I have sort of what I want to say to Mr. Steve with United Parcel Service is the fact, thank you for your support of my organization, and I want to sort of talk about the 3 areas you talked about was environment, economics, and social. And I'd like to, at some point, talk to you about a proposal that might be a little bit outside of what you maybe are projecting for sustainability, but I think it might be something, so I'd like to get your card and talk with you about that. And then what's your last name?
Felicia, and there's Debbie.
Debbie, Miss Debbie, you
She
talked
knows
about
me.
wanting to do a project you do projects in community, and so the project that I have right now, I just want to see how investment or capital groups be supportive of it, is I purchased a 50,000 square feet building from the Atlanta public school system. It's sitting in the neighborhood abandoned. It's about a 101-year-old building, architecturally sound, foundation sound, and we were able to get a grant to purchase it. But sort of like a little bit what Felicia's saying, it's sort of now trying to find a way we want to turn it into a state-of-the-art green technology global community center. And so we've been going to different conferences trying to figure out where the money is. And so I don't know, maybe private capital may be helpful, and how do you decide which projects you pick?
Sounds
We have to get paid back. So you have to figure out how you're going to make that monthly payment. That's the bottom line.
It sounds like you maybe need to connect with some people afterwards to
Yes,
flesh
please
this out a
do.
bit. Thank you.
And I'm just going to jump in to say there's a lot going on in Vine City. So in Mabel's defense, I know that it borders on the AU Center is there connected to Vine City. So some of us are really struggling hard to look at how do we bring the investment in. There's certain things coming into the area. So opportunities like this are now a lot richer than they were a year ago.
Great. Thank you. Next question. Yes.
Yes, my name is Eva Griffin. I'm a student at Berea College. My name is Eva Griffin. I'm a student at Berea College. And I'm interested in relocalizing economies as a strategy for increasing, social, economic, and environmental sustainability. And some of the ideas of, for example, Michael Schumann or the Business Alliance for Local Living Economies, as far as local stock exchanges or more worker-owned businesses and different models like that. I'm wondering how you feel about the viability of some of those as the significance of them in terms of some of the objectives we're trying to achieve with better jobs and a better environment.
Let me tee off the discussion, maybe some folks have ideas. I think there's been a natural progression back towards localization because you do this expand and contract kind of thing. And you obviously see it with food. I mean, that's a pretty well-developed movement. You see it with restaurants. You're even seeing it with manufacturing and consumer goods. And there are urban manufacturing movements in kind of trend-setting cities like New York City and San Francisco, where you have artisans, the creative class, who have joined with manufacturers, and they're making products locally for a local market. And so I think you see that continuing to expand, and I think, because I think there's a consumer demand for it precisely. I don't know if anyone else has thoughts about localization.
I'm noticing the local currency idea that's kind of jumping off in some small communities. I think that's fabulous because that means that community can really become interdependent and perhaps not self-sufficient, but close. So I think it's a great movement whose time has come.
And some things have to be local. Water is local. No matter where you are in the world, water is local. And Atlanta's a good example of that.
Yeah, very good point. Okay, last question here. Looks like we have time for it.
Yeah, hi. My name's Torin Kexel. I work with Green Opportunities in Asheville, North Carolina. And my question is, I see a real disconnect sometimes between the green jobs that are coming to town and the people that are working on them. And it kind of relates to what she just asked about how do we connect the people locally. And I think, Ms. Davis, it kind of goes to your point that there's these starving college students and there's these buildings that they're going to school in and possibly living in. How do they work on those buildings? How do we get that curriculum to get those students working on those buildings?
Well, let me say that.
And real quick, just to take that, expand that idea, how do we get the people in the public housing communities? How do we get the people in the low-income communities jobs on their buildings, in their neighborhoods? And how do we invest in those communities?
I got you.
And I know we don't have enough time to do your question justice, but 30
I'm
seconds.
so that, at the bottom line, the thing is it the right question? So thank you for stepping forward with the right question. So it's like, if we get it right, what would it look like? So for me, in my little small capacity, I have in the AU Center a program to train students, faculty, whoever will come to become LEED certified. So LEED, Green Associate, all the way through LEED AP. So that means that you have value. Number one, you can look at a project, you can assess it, you can work on it, and you're credentialed in a way that the university may not have provided. You also get a network this with U.S. Green Building Council and all the other enviros. Then you look at a project, just like you saw Abel Mabel step up and say, like some people would say, oh, she's just self-promoting. You better, there's some equity folks up here, and she knows what she needs is money. So you too approach that you have to come with the idea that's all the way formed, especially when you don't have capital. So an idea in search of capital has to be so crystal clear, so thought out, that all that's needed is that investment. With that, then these folks can direct you to who else you need to have the expertise. And then, guess what? You go fix the building. As soon as you have a way to get the supplies, you have the training, you get the job done. This thing, everybody is saying, we need employment. Yeah, but there's plenty of work. Go fill a pothole. So get folks going. And then if you can't do any of that because it takes money, then green what's around you. The crime goes down if you just plant trees, plant flowers, do whatever. Greening that in terms of going into that community that's unemployed and not looking so great, clean it up. Just go in, say, take your buddies on the weekend and say, we don't have anything else to do, we don't have any money. So let's go just sweep up, clean up, and do some good work.
It's always good to get paid a good wage for something.
It is. But in the meantime, there's work.
Yeah.
Training is the key, and I heard about a great program that the state of Georgia has. Is it called Trade Up? Do I have? Yeah. And I don't know if you're Asheville, North Carolina. I don't know if North Carolina has that, but I'm going to research that when I go back to DC because I hadn't heard of it, and it's a great program to get people started in the right training to do those jobs.
It is. They should really announce the training that's been done. So. Come on, Deb, you need to run over there.
There she is.
It's called Trade Up.
Trade Up. It is a great program. I've seen it mentioned a couple times. Well, before we wrap up, I just want to say thank you for the great questions. Hopefully some of the panelists will be able to stay afterwards for the reception. We continue the discussion. Sound like there was some business to transact potentially too. But I want to thank Shannon very much for coming from Charlotte and joining us today. I want to thank Steve and Debbie and Felicia. Please give them a big round of applause for their contribution.